I satisfied my own daughter's marriage before she ever walked down the aisle. Not with anger, not with accusations, with a single phone call I made from my kitchen at 2 in the morning while everyone in this family was still dreaming about centerpieces and champagne. My name is Della Monroe. I am 63 years old, and I have been wrong about very few people in my life. The ones I was wrong about taught me lessons I carry in my bones. So when I tell you I knew what was coming, I need you to understand I didn't guess. I recognized it. The way you recognize a storm by the way the birds go quiet. My daughter Simone was sitting across from me at my kitchen table, 3 days before her wedding, showing me pictures of floral arrangements on her phone like the world was made of petals and promises. She was 31, brilliant, careful with her words, and reckless with her trust. She got that from her father. He believed in people the way some folks believe in weather forecasts completely, and always surprised when it rained. I raised Simone alone after he passed. 15 years of packing lunches and checking homework and pretending I wasn't terrified every single night that I was doing it all wrong. She turned out steady, she turned out kind. And kindness, if you don't watch it carefully, becomes a door people walk through without knocking. Her fiancé was a man named Gregory Ashford. Pleasant face, firm handshake, the kind of man who holds your chair out at dinner and remembers your birthday without being reminded. He worked in finance, said the right things at the right times, and treated Simone like she was the most important person in any room. I liked him. I'll admit that. I liked the way he looked at her. I liked the way he laughed at my jokes even when they weren't funny. What I didn't like was his mother. Nadine Ashford arrived in our lives the way certain women arrive, with gifts and compliments and a smile so wide it felt like a fence. She brought wine to every dinner. She remembered my favorite flowers. She called me Della, dear, like we'd known each other for decades. Every time she entered a room, she rearranged it. Not the furniture, the people. She decided where conversations went. She decided when laughter stopped. She decided who mattered and who was scenery. And she did all of it so gracefully that nobody noticed they were being managed. The first time she visited my home in Charlotte, she walked through the front door and said, "Oh, Della, this is so charming, so much character." And the way she said character made my jaw tighten, because I've lived long enough to know that character is what people say when they mean small. Her husband, Martin, followed behind her carrying a box of pastries like an offering. Their younger son, Keith, wandered in last, phone in hand, scanning my living room the way people scan a place they're measuring for something they haven't named yet. I served coffee. I smiled. I watched. If you're listening right now, tell me where you're from. Because women who've raised daughters alone know the difference between a mother-in-law who's welcoming and a mother-in-law who's collecting. Simone didn't see it. She saw a woman who wanted to be involved, who cared about the wedding, who kept saying things like, "We're all family now," with such warmth it felt like a blanket. But blankets can smother you if someone else controls when they come off. Nadine talked about the wedding like it was a merger, venues and guest lists and budgets discussed in boardroom tones. She mentioned aligning expectations at least 3 times during that first dinner. She said transparency between families like it was a toast. Simone nodded along, grateful for the attention, grateful that someone was making things feel organized. Organized. That word again. It follows certain people like perfume. The truth about our family's money is simple and quiet. My late husband's father owned land outside Charlotte, not flashy, not scenic, just flat acreage that nobody thought twice about until a development company came knocking 22 years ago. They wanted to build. They offered what seemed like a fortune at the time. My father-in-law said no. He leased portions instead, kept ownership, let the value climb. When he passed, it came to my husband. When my husband passed, it came to me. And when I sat down with a woman named Patrice Keller, our estate attorney, she helped me build a structure around it that would protect Simone without exposing her. The trust was worth $170 million the last time Patrice updated the numbers. It didn't feel like that number. It felt like a locked room I was guarding for my daughter until she was ready to hold the key without dropping it. Simone knew there was family money. She didn't know how much. She didn't know the structure. She didn't need to, not yet. I let her live a normal life because normal is armor. When people think you're ordinary, they don't calculate your silence. They don't study your habits. They don't rehearse their approach. That invisibility is what kept us safe for over a decade. I learned young that wealth built in silence is stolen in silence too. The people who come for it don't wear masks, they wear manners. They carry casseroles and legal pads and phrases like, just a formality, and this protects everyone. They make you feel ungrateful for hesitating. They make you feel paranoid for reading the fine print. I knew this because I'd watched it happen once, not to me, but close enough to leave a scar. My sister-in-law, Carolyn, married a man whose family operated the same way. Within a year of her wedding, she'd signed over power of attorney to her mother-in-law during what she was told was a routine estate planning session. By the time Carolyn realized what had happened, her access to her own inheritance was filtered through people who smiled at Thanksgiving and subtracted in private. It took her 4 years and a judge to get it back. 4 years of holidays spent across the table from people who had stolen from her while calling it love. I watched that. I memorized it. And I swore it would never happen to my daughter. 3 days before the wedding, Simone was glowing. That dangerous glow brides get when they believe the hardest part is behind them. She was showing me centerpieces, peonies and eucalyptus. She was talking about first dance songs and seating charts and whether Gregory's uncle could sit near the bar without causing a scene. Normal bride things, beautiful bride things. Then she said something that made my blood cool. Nadine wants to do a family sit-down the day after the wedding. She said it's tradition in their family, just a quick thing, getting everyone on the same page financially. She called it a financial alignment meeting. Financial alignment meeting. I repeated the words inside my head and felt each one land like a stone on glass. I kept my voice even. What does that mean exactly? Simone shrugged, still scrolling flowers. I don't know. She said it's about making sure we're all protected. Insurance stuff, beneficiary designations, that kind of thing. Protected. There it was. The word people use when they want you to hand over the keys without checking the lock. I didn't shout. I didn't grab her phone or lecture her or make a scene. I did what I've always done when danger whispers instead of screams. I leaned closer. Baby, I said, I need you to hear me. Don't tell Nadine anything about our family's finances. Not a number, not a name, not a mention of the trust. Nothing. Simone's scrolling stopped. She looked up at me with that expression daughters make when they think their mother is being dramatic. Mom, she said softly, she's just being thorough. Gregory said his mom does this with everyone in the family. Everyone in the family. That phrase should have been a comfort. Instead, it told me this wasn't Nadine's first time. Thorough people ask questions, I told her. Controlling people schedule meetings. Simone didn't argue. She didn't agree either. She just looked at me with something between love and pity, the way young women look at older women when they think caution is the same as fear. I let her keep that look. She'd need it to soften what was coming. I called Patrice Keller that night at 2 a.m., not because it was urgent in the legal sense, but because my gut was churning the way it did when Carolyn first told me about the power of attorney. I left a voicemail. Something is moving. I need you to activate the succession provision before Saturday. Then I sat in my kitchen in the dark, hands folded, breathing slow, thinking about all the ways a smile can be a weapon. The wedding was beautiful. I'll give it that. A garden ceremony at a vineyard outside Asheville, October light pouring through the trees like honey. Simone walked toward Gregory looking like something painted, her dress catching the breeze, her face wide open with joy. I cried. I cried because she was happy, and I cried because I wasn't sure how long that happiness would hold. Nadine sat in the front row in a cream suit and pearl earrings, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief she'd probably practiced using in the mirror. Martin sat beside her, straight-backed, hands on his knees like a man waiting for a meeting to start. Keith leaned back in his chair with his ankles crossed, scanning the crowd like he was keeping a guest list of his own. Gregory waited at the altar with the kind of nervous smile grooms wear when they haven't yet learned what marriage actually costs. The ceremony was smooth, the vows were steady. When they kissed, the crowd erupted, and for 1 full minute, I let myself believe that I was wrong about everything. The reception moved the way receptions do: laughter, toasts, music, dancing. Simone pulled me onto the dance floor and whispered, "Thank you for everything, Mom." I held her tight and said nothing because words would have cracked me open. Nadine floated through the crowd like a hostess at her own event, touching arms, leaning in for whispers, accepting praise for how well everything had turned out. She mentioned the word family 11 times during her toast. I counted. She talked about legacy and union and building something together, and every sentence felt like a blueprint. Later, while guests lingered over cake, I saw Nadine step outside to take a phone call. She was gone 7 minutes. When she came back, she had a different energy, satisfied, settled, like a woman who'd just confirmed a reservation. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of the wedding, because of what I knew was coming after it. The next morning arrived soft and gold. October in Asheville, does that makes even bad days look beautiful. Simone called me early, laughing, still in her robe at the hotel, Gregory asleep beside her. She said they were coming by my rental for brunch before heading to the airport for their honeymoon. I told her I'd make eggs. 40 minutes later, my daughter sat at the small kitchen table in the rental house, her hair loose, her face bare, eating scrambled eggs like a girl again. Gregory sat beside her, relaxed, scrolling the news on his phone. They looked like any newlywed couple on a Sunday morning, tired, happy, untouched by what I felt tightening around us. Then the doorbell rang. I opened it and saw Nadine standing on the porch like she'd been planted there by design. Hair done, lipstick perfect, dressed in a blazer that had no business being at a casual Sunday brunch. Martin stood behind her, leather briefcase in his hand, not a weekend bag, a briefcase. Keith was further back, leaning against the porch railing with a coffee cup, watching like a spectator. And beside Nadine was a woman I'd never seen before, mid-40s, sensible heels, a manila folder tucked under her arm, and a notary stamp visible in her open bag. "Good morning, Della," Nadine said with the warmth of a woman who has already decided how the next hour will go. "We figured we'd stop by before the kids head out. Just a quick family thing." Quick family thing. The words tasted like rust. Simone appeared behind me, wiping her hands on a napkin. "Nadine, I didn't know you were coming by." Nadine beamed. "Oh, sweetheart, we don't need an invitation. We're family now." She walked in without waiting for me to step aside. Martin followed. Keith drifted in last, closing the door behind him like sealing an envelope. The woman with the notary stamp entered quietly, the way tools enter a room present but pretending to be invisible. Gregory stood from the table, confused but polite. "Mom? What's going on?" Nadine touched his arm and guided him gently back toward his chair. "Sit, honey. This will be quick." She placed a folder on the table, thick, heavy, the corners perfectly aligned, and smoothed the top page with her palm. The sound of paper on wood made the room feel smaller. "Now," she said, looking at Simone with a smile that was 3 parts warmth and 1 part calculation. "This is just a standard post-wedding financial alignment. We do this with everyone in the family. It makes sure everyone is protected. Protected. Standard. Everyone. The holy trinity of people who want you to sign without reading." Martin opened the briefcase and produced another set of papers. "It's really just beneficiary updates and asset acknowledgement forms. Straightforward." The notary set her stamp on the edge of the table and opened her manila folder. "I'll just need valid IDs from both parties when you're ready," she said, polite and rehearsed. Simone looked at me. Quick, like a reflex. Then back at Nadine. "What exactly am I acknowledging?" she asked. And I heard something in her voice I hadn't heard before, not suspicion, but attention. Nadine's smile widened. "Just that marital assets are shared and that both families are transparent about what they bring to the union. It's a protection measure." "A protection measure," Simone repeated, tasting the words. "Exactly," Nadine said, sliding the first page toward her. "Sign here and here." She produced a pen from her blazer pocket, her own pen, brought for this moment, and placed it in front of Simone like a gift. Gregory shifted in his chair. "Mom, I didn't know about this." "You didn't need to, sweetheart," Nadine said without looking at him. "This is between the women. Between the women." As if removing the men from the equation made it less like an ambush, Keith sipped his coffee by the counter, watching Simone's hands the way someone watches a slot machine. Simone picked up the pen. "Not to sign, to hold. The way you hold something while you decide whether it belongs in your hand." She looked at me again, longer this time, and I saw the question in her eyes. "Is this what you warned me about?" I didn't nod. I didn't shake my head. I simply stepped to the table and sat down beside my daughter. unhurried, like I had been expecting this moment since before the flowers were ordered. "May I?" I said to the notary, reaching for the folder. Nadine's hand moved toward the papers, a small, instinctive grab, then stopped. She smiled. "Della, dear, it's really very simple. There's no need to complicate things." "Reading isn't complicating," I said. "Reading is reading." The notary glanced at Nadine, then at me, and slid the folder toward my side of the table. Whatever loyalty she'd been hired for, it didn't extend to obstructing a mother from reading a document her daughter was being asked to sign. I read slowly, not because I didn't understand, but because I wanted everyone in that room to feel the weight of each second I wasn't signing. Page 1. Spousal Asset Disclosure Agreement. Page 2. Mutual Beneficiary Designation. Page 3. Acknowledgement of shared interest in any trust, estate, or inheritance received by either party before or during the marriage. I stopped on page 3. Read it again, then a third time. "This clause," I said, tapping the paragraph with one finger, "states that by signing, both parties acknowledge shared marital interest in pre-existing trusts." Nadine tilted her head. "That's standard language." "Standard for whom?" I asked. "Silence. The kind of silence that makes people shift in their seats." Martin leaned forward. "Mrs. Monroe, we're not trying to take anything. We're trying to create clarity." "Clarity?" I repeated. "Clarity usually comes with lawyers and weeks of review, not a notary at brunch." Nadine's smile thinned. I could see the machinery behind it recalculating. "Della," she said, lowering her voice the way people do when they want you to feel unreasonable, "we're family. This isn't adversarial." "Then you won't mind if our attorney reviews it first," I said. Gregory looked at his mother, then at Simone, confusion shifting into something heavier. "Mom, maybe we should wait." Nadine's eyes snapped to him. "There's nothing to wait for. This is a formality." I turned to the notary. "Ma'am, what's your name?" "Karen Gillis," she said, sitting a little straighter. "Miss Gillis, have you reviewed the reference trust documents?" Karen hesitated. "I was told the signing was straightforward." "You were told," I said gently, "but have you verified?" Karen looked at Nadine. Nadine looked at Karen. And in that small exchange, I saw the crack. "The truth is," I continued, my voice calm and clear, "the trust this document references was restructured 48 hours ago. It now contains provisions that explicitly exclude spousal claims and in-law access. It also includes a coercion clause." Nadine's face didn't move, but her breathing changed. Faster, controlled, but faster. Martin set his coffee down. Keith's thumb stopped moving on his phone screen. "A coercion clause," I said, looking directly at Nadine now, "that states if the beneficiary is pressured, rushed, or manipulated into disclosing or transferring interest within 90 days of marriage, all external claims are permanently forfeited." The word permanently sat in the room like a locked door. Nadine laughed. "Short, brittle. Della, that's absurd. No one is pressuring anyone." "You arrived unannounced," I said, "with a notary, the morning after the wedding, before my daughter has had time to unpack her suitcase. This is how our family operates." Nadine snapped, the sweetness dropping off her voice like paint off a wall. "We believe in transparency. Transparency doesn't need a notary stamp," Simone said. Everyone turned. My daughter had been quiet, holding the pen, listening. Now she set the pen down on the table, carefully, the way you set down something that almost hurt you. "You didn't tell me about this meeting," Simone said to Nadine. "You didn't tell Gregory. You showed up with paperwork and a stamp and expected me to sign before I finished breakfast." Nadine's jaw tightened. "Sweetheart, you're making this bigger than it needs to be." "No," Simone said. "You made it this big when you brought a notary to my mother's kitchen." Gregory pushed back from the table. "Mom, what is this? What are you doing?" "I'm protecting you," Nadine hissed, and the hiss revealed everything the smile had been hiding. "From what?" Gregory asked. "From my wife?" The silence that followed was surgical. It cut through every pretense in the room. Karen Gillis closed her folder. She picked up her notary stamp and placed it back in her bag with quiet precision. "I'm not comfortable proceeding under these circumstances," she said, professional and final. If the reference trust has been restructured, the documents may not be valid as presented. Nadine turned toward her, eyes blazing. We hired you, and I'm declining to complete the work, Karen said. She stood, nodded once at me, and walked toward the door. Martin grabbed her arm, not hard, but enough. Now hold on, let's not be hasty. Karen looked down at his hand on her arm, then up at his face. Sir, please let go of me. He did. Immediately, and the room watched him do it. Karen left. The door closed behind her, and the quiet that filled the space was not peaceful. It was the quiet that comes after something has been exposed. Nadine stood rigid, her hands gripping her purse strap. Keith moved toward the door like a man looking for an exit he could call a decision. Martin stared at the table, his briefcase now looking less like authority and more like evidence. Simone stood. She gathered the papers, straightened them neatly, and handed them to Nadine. Take these with you, she said. Her voice was steady. Her hands did not shake. And don't ever bring paperwork to my family's home again. Nadine's face twisted not into anger, but into something worse. Disbelief. The disbelief of a woman who has always been obeyed, confronting the first wall she cannot charm her way through. You're going to regret this, she said, voice low. Simone didn't blink. The only thing I almost regretted was picking up that pen. Gregory stood next to Simone, not behind her, not in front of her, beside her. He looked at his mother, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet but steady. You need to leave, Mom. Nadine stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. Gregory, I watched you try to corner my wife on the first morning of our marriage, he said. I'm not going to pretend that didn't happen. Martin stepped forward. Son, your mother was only trying to— I know what she was trying to do, Gregory said. I've watched her do it before. That sentence landed like a slap. Nadine's eyes went wide, then narrow, then empty. She turned toward the door. Martin and Keith followed. No goodbye. No performance. Just the sound of heels on hardwood and a door pulled shut too hard. The room breathed again. Simone exhaled like she'd been underwater. She sat down slowly, pressing her palms flat on the table, staring at the place where the papers had been. Mom, she said, voice cracking at one edge. How did you know? I reached across the table and covered her hands with mine. Because I've watched this before, I said. And because the people who want to protect you don't show up with a stamp. Simone's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She swallowed hard and looked at Gregory, who was standing by the window now, hands in his pockets, staring at the porch where his family had just been standing. Are you okay? She asked him. He turned to her, and I saw something shift in his face, not sadness exactly, but the particular grief that comes from recognizing a truth you've been avoiding your entire life. I should have warned you, he said. I should have told you she does this. I just didn't think she'd do it to us. Simone held his gaze. But you chose to stay. I chose you, he said simply. I stood up from the table and walked to the window. The October light was still pouring in, warm and golden, like nothing had happened at all. But something had happened. My daughter had been tested, and she'd passed. Not because I saved her, because she listened. Because she held the pen without signing. Because she asked questions instead of apologizing. I turned back and looked at them both, my daughter and her husband, standing in the wreckage of someone else's plan, choosing each other over comfort. The trust is safe, I said quietly. Patrice restructured it before the ceremony. Everything is sealed. Simone looked at me, and in her eyes I saw the understanding settle, not just about the money, not just about Nadine, but about why I'd raised her the way I had, why I kept things quiet, why I taught her to be kind and suspicious in equal measure, why I told her, 3 days before her wedding, to keep her mouth shut about things that belonged to her. Silence isn't secrecy. Silence is a wall you build around the people you love, so that the ones who come smiling with folders and stamps and words like standard and protection and family can't reach what matters. I walked to the front door, turned the deadbolt, and let the lock fall into place. Some doors close soft. This one closed final.